Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It's Dan, and this time we are back with part 2 of our show that we're doing on parental alienation with my guest Simon. If you have not seen part 1 yet, I'm going to encourage you to go watch that first and then come to this one, although the honest truth is you'll be able to watch them in either order. The first episode, Simon was kind enough to share his personal story and that of some others and talk about how it affected him, his daughter, everyone, and why he does the work that he does now. It'll give you a little bit of a baseline as we're now going to, in this episode, discuss a little bit more of the particulars of what parental alienation is and how it shows itself, how you can actually recognize what it is, the effects it has, and that kind of thing. So we're going to be a little bit more technical. If you want to watch episode 1 first, just go down and look in the show notes. I will have a link there for you. Without any further ado, let me bring my friend Simon on. He's over in the awesome UK. By the way, Simon, I've never been there. One day I'm going to get there, and I think we should go out and have, what do you guys call it, a pint? I'll say a beer. And I don't even drink.
Well, I've got 4 spare rooms here, so if you ever come over, there's a room for you.
It is definitely on my to-do list. Probably not this year, but maybe in the next couple. All right, Simon. So we covered so much in episode 1, and I truly thank you again for sharing your personal story. But as we were talking about it in that episode, there's so much to cover, such a breadth of information. We didn't even scratch the surface on some of the particulars. So we decided, we're actually in the middle of the show, to do this episode. And again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do that. But let's kind of real quick, why don't you give an intro of yourself so if somebody's watching this episode first, they know who the heck you are and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so guys, my name's Simon. I'm from the UK. I'm actually a joiner, and I design furniture. So I obviously make it, sell it, and design it. Basically what I do. And I went through a mild to moderate case of parental alienation. It didn't really manifest to a severe level, but the people I've been working with since, definitely, there has been cases of severe levels, which I'll go into today. Yeah, so that's how I got into it, because I kind of experienced it myself somewhat.
As many of us did. And for those, if you've never watched this show before, I am also a victim of parental alienation, both as a child. Yeah. My mother tried to alienate me from my father, and as a parent. And I just want to throw this out. I don't know if you know this, Simon, but as of the day we are recording this, today's date is April 25th when we're recording this. Today is National Parental Alienation Day. I don't know if you know that.
No, do you know what? That's quite funny, because at 10 o'clock this morning, Dan, the guy I'm helping was in court today at 10 this morning.
Really?
For parental alienation. Yeah, I'm going to have to tell him now, because I actually didn't know.
Yeah,
that was the day.
Yeah, I have it on my calendar, and I actually normally would know ahead of time, but I to be honest with you, I forgot. And then it popped up on my calendar this morning, and I went, oh yeah. So now I got to do a video over on TikTok about it. But I fortuitous that today is the day we're recording it. So if you're obviously you'll be watching it after the recording date, but for those of you that don't know, April 25th each year is Parental Alienation Day, and it's something that's fairly new, and it's because of people like Simon that day now exists, where it is something where we can recognize those that are suffering through parental alienation, both children, moms, dads, all of them, and have a discussion, which is the whole purpose behind this. So one of the first things that we wanted to do, Simon, as we were talking in the last episode, is kind of go through the 8 manifestations. I'm going to let you decide. There are 8 of them. You can pick whatever order you want to do them in. And we're going to discuss what they are. And for those of you listening, we're going to also interject different ways you can spot how it's happening and stuff like that, because many people do not realize that they are victims of parental alienation, either as a child or as a potential dad, mom, going through, say, a family court case. And somebody else that I work closely with, Maddie of the Anti-Alienation Project, covers this as well. But she and I were talking 2-3 months ago about she's going on college campuses to talk to kids, and she's seeing upwards of 20 to 30% of kids do not realize that they're victims of parental alienation as a child.
Yeah.
That's a
The thing is,
monstrous number.
at what age can you discuss parental alienation or make them aware of it?
She's talking to college age.
Yeah.
So they're adults.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. It's not something you really can discuss with, say, an 8-10-year-old. At least not directly. You can indirectly do so.
And
Go ahead.
And by the time they get to college years, it's probably already happened and manifested.
And then the damage is largely done. And
Yeah,
I will put a link down in the show notes to Maddie's channel and encourage people, after you watch this one first, but to go check out her channel and see, because she's on college campuses interviewing these and seeing how these kids are suddenly realizing that a lot of the issues they're dealing with mentally, whatever they might be, they're the result of having been alienated from a parent as a child. And that's one of the other things we're going to talk about. So, Simon, let's jump in. Where would you like to begin, my friend?
Well, actually, Dan, you were talking about the manifestations, but maybe it might be a better idea to go through the tactics first, because the manifestations
absolutely is fine with me.
Of the tactics. But just to give viewers an idea, there's a 5-factor model that provides evidence to understand the presence and the indicators of parental alienation. And the first one is contact refusal. So in any case of parental alienation, there has to be refusal of contact. The second one is a positive relationship prior to refusal. So obviously, if you didn't have any kind of relationship with the child to begin with, and then you say you don't have a relationship with them, you can't claim parental alienation because you didn't obviously have a relationship to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Absence of abuse or neglect on the part of the alienated parents. So what the courts like to do is to eliminate any abuse or neglect, because some of the manifestations mirror the manifestations of an alienated child versus an abused child.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be very careful there, because obviously if a child's getting abused, that's the first thing we need to look at. If it's been abused by the parent it's rejecting.
Correct.
And if they're not, if it's proven that the rejected parent isn't abusive, then obviously that's a huge red flag for alienation. Because personally, Dan, I don't know what you think, but I don't think there's another reason for rejection. It's nature. It's nature that a child will see both parents as their safe place, their caregiver.
It goes against everything we are as human beings, our nature, our environment, all of it, to have a child reject a parent. Even, and we talked about this on the last episode, even abused children will still in some way have a connection with the other parent, the parent that's abusing them, as opposed to an alienated child. Not always, but often has no connection or no feeling, even in many cases. It's a subtle but not so subtle difference that people often can't pick up on, and very important. And my argument is, just to throw it in real quick, that parental alienation is a form of abuse. And that one of the issues, and we're going to get into it in a little bit more in depth, is that it's not recognized by a lot of people, including the courts, as child abuse, and it should be. But that's a side note. I'll let you continue on.
Well, absolutely, Dan. And anyone who says that parental alienation isn't child abuse, they're absolutely wrong. It's a brainwashing. It's psychological abuse.
I believe it. Go ahead, Simon. But I would actually argue it's worse than physical abuse.
Yeah.
Because physical abuse, and I'm not trying to say in any way, shape, or form that physical abuse is okay or it's not a big deal. It's horrendous. But physical abuse can heal much quicker than abuse through alienation, which I'm 61 years old. It happened to me 50 years ago and still affects me to this day. So, uh,
Well, yeah, exactly. Take you, for example, John. Like, if your mother or father was to have physically hit you and you had a bruise, for example, on your face, it would obviously be not there today and you're 61.
right.
Yet you're still talking about it at 61. That bruise would have been long gone and forgotten about, and it's probably never entered your mind since. But 61 years old, you're still here, you're talking to me about it, and you're still feeling the effects from it. And I've seen a case where there's a guy who's 71 and he's still taking therapy. So yeah, I believe that it's a form of domestic violence because
It
it's
is.
intended to harm the other parent, and that's what domestic violence is.
Yeah, it's a combination of both child abuse and domestic violence in
Yeah,
essence. And
absolutely.
to those of you that are trying to like understand why we're saying what we're saying, because no one can ever justify physical abuse, and we're not trying to do that.
No, no,
But
not at all.
those scars, for lack of a better term, can heal, and you can escape physical abuse if you're being abused as a child when you're an adult, for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Parental alienation and that type of abuse, you can't escape it, because and I've shared this before. Even in my 20s and 30s, my mother continued to do it. I didn't live with her. I had no fear of a physical thing. She
It's like a
continued it
groomer.
all the way into my
Yeah,
roughly late 30s, early 40s, when I finally disowned her completely. And it was the best thing I ever did in my life. That's when I healed. And it wasn't till then. So that, physically, I would have, like we talked about, I could have healed quickly. I could have escaped the situation. But even if you discontinue all contact with an alienator parent, it's still there. You can't escape it. And, I've come to terms with it. That's the difference. But it's
and most of the times you don't even know. You
no,
could compare it again. You could compare it against grooming. So you're probably not aware of it until you're an adult and you've discovered. Well, how did you find out that you were alienated? When was the first time you realized that you were an alienated
I
child?
actually started realizing it about 12, 13 years old. And the reason is, and I'm the exception here, most
Yeah.
people don't recognize it till they're adults, but my younger sister, she's a stepsister, a different father, is 6 years younger than me. And when my mother and her father split, it was very acrimonious, the divorce. I mean, it was horrible. And I started seeing what my mother was doing to my sister. And mind you, I was, 12, 13. She was 6, 7. And she was doing everything she could to alienate my sister from her father. So I had it right in front of me as basically a
Yeah.
movie playing out in front of me. And I kept going, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Because I was
Yeah,
older,
yeah,
six,
definitely.
7 year old versus a 12-year-old. There's a little bit difference in what you can understand and recognize,
Yeah.
maturity and all that. And then I started going, wait, she said the same thing to me. Wait, she did the same thing with me. So I started recognizing it at 12, 13. I started confronting her 13, 14, and ultimately moved out of the house at 16 and went and lived with my dad. I'm the exception, though. Had my sister not been going through what she was going through, I don't know that
Mm.
I would have recognized it, at least to an adult or even ever, because it becomes your
Yeah.
quote unquote norm, right? It's what you think is normal, so you don't recognize it as a problem.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So you being a young child and recognizing this, you recognize that because you've seen it happen to somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, when it happens to yourself, you won't notice it. And like you say, it's like a live movie. You're watching it happen, and you knew things that she was saying wasn't true. Yet when she told them things to you, she made you believe they were true. So there's a difference between happening to yourself and watching it happen to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like most people who are in a domestic violence relationship thinks their partner's amazing, but maybe he's just got a terrible temper. But a, but an outsider looking in will be able to see exactly what it is for what it is, an abusive relationship, where the victim doesn't usually see it. They hang around for years and years and put up with it, not even know. But if they've seen another relationship, they would probably be able to spot it.
Right, because
Yeah,
if they could see it happening in front of them
to
to
somebody else. Yeah,
somebody else, because and people I've actually talked with people about this, and they've said, well, you see it on TV, it's not the same. You disassociate
no
from what you see on TV, right?
reality. Yeah,
Versus real life. Like, I'll give one
yeah,
example of how I recognized it. So when my ex stepfather, my sister's father, showed up to pick her up one day. Mind you, my sister was 6 at the time. My mother was telling her, you can't go. See, he was like 5-10 minutes late. Whatever it was, traffic, whatever. He was 5-10 minutes. See, he doesn't love you. He didn't want to come get you. Now, my sister did not know he was parked in the driveway waiting for
yeah,
her, right? So
yeah,
she got all upset, went to her room, and started crying. I don't even know if she would remember that, all right? But me at 12, I had been outside and saw him pull up and gone in and told my mother he was there. But I watched what my mother did, and I went, wait a minute. She used to say that same thing to me about my father. If something happened, because
yeah,
it's inevitable, you run into traffic or you're running behind, you might be late once in a while. She would prevent me from going because your dad doesn't love you. He couldn't show up when he was supposed to be here. And, I believed it. That was I knew at 8, 9, 10 years old. That's the world to me, right? I don't know what else is going on. That's how I got my awakening. And as awful as that was for my sister and what she went through, in a way, for me, it was a good thing because it enabled me to see what
yeah,
was going on. And then later, when she got older and she came to me and said, I'm wondering about something. And she was 18, 19, somewhere in there at the time. I remember sitting down to her and saying, all right, we're going to have a conversation. You're not going to like what I'm about to tell you, but I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Right? Because she was starting to put two and two together, and I laid it all out for her. And no judgment. I did not like her father. Him and I did. We were oil and water. All right. We did not get along. But I respected their relationship enough. So I wasn't putting him down, but I was being honest with her about everything I had seen. Ultimately, she reconnected with him, disowned our mother, and they had a great relationship until he passed away. And I thankful that she was able to do that. But again, it goes back to, I was lucky. Most people don't have that experience that I did.
yeah. You said at the beginning, Dan, that when said that you turn up late, see he doesn't love you. That's actually one of the manifestations.
Yep.
You obviously know that, but yeah, from my experience, I can't like believe how accurate Amy Barker's manifestations and Richard Gardner's tactics are. Like, I've seen them all. It's almost like they're written for this case, if you know what I mean.
The one you're
They are
working
so
on.
accurate.
Yeah.
They are so accurate. There's only two on there that we can't have. Like, we haven't got because it's impossible. So if it wasn't for that, he would have them all. He's got all the manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, you've just told me a part of a story. Straight away, one of the manifestations. And yeah, and if people who are listening don't know how to spot it and how to understand it, then they won't know until it's too late. And that's why we're obviously doing this podcast.
Right. Yeah, and it's not
It's,
just a manifestation, I might add. It's also an example of the tactics, right? My mother was trying to
yeah,
limit contact. You would
limit,
mention that
yeah,
as one of the
limit, yeah,
tactics. And in a matter of speaking, interfering with the communication, because I wasn't allowed, nor was my sister, to talk to our fathers about it,
yeah.
right?
Withdrawal of love.
Withdrawal of love, or trying to badmouth, you mentioned this, badmouth the other parent. See,
Yeah,
it's not, in my opinion, and I was looking for years on this, it's never just one thing. It may not be all, say, 17 tactics or 8 manifestations, but there's usually multiples of them. And
multiple, yeah.
they may not all occur at the same time either. At least that's my experience. What are some of the other tactics that, because I want to make sure we get through them. You get through a lot of them, but let's make sure we get through all of them if we could.
Yeah. Well, the number 4 and number 5 is basically alienated behaviours for the preferred parent. So that is the 17 tactics and child manifesting symptoms of parental alienation, which is obviously the manifestation. So I've obviously got this written down because I can't remember every single one. I'm getting old, Dan. My memory. I don't
Wait a
even know
minute.
what I did this
If
morning.
you're old, what am I then? Because I got you by a few years, my friend.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if you noticed. Like I called you Fran in the last one.
No, I didn't.
I started it off, but I was hoping you didn't hear.
I didn't hear.
I went Fran Dan.
That's all good. I focused on
Right.
the other things you're saying because it's so valuable, the information you're giving.
So strategy number 1, and you can get this online, guys, if you just put in the 17 alienating, the 17 strategies by Richard Gardner. Number 1 is bad mouthing. Like you've just described there, Dan, it's like your mother came out and she was bad mouthing you, making out that you didn't love your children, or you were late, or you weren't going to turn up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so like everyone knows what bad mouthing is, but I've seen well, in the case that I'm in now, I actually saw a recording of these two, the mother and father. What had happened is he'd come to pick up the children, and he was in the car, and he got out the car, went to the door, knocked on the door and everything, got the children. One of them was slightly reluctant to come. One of them wasn't. So he took one in the car, and he came back to the child and managed to get the child into the car. But then the mother decided to follow, knock on the window and put the window down and say, is he all right? Is he all right? Is he safe? Like in front of the child, in front of the father. And she said to the child, you don't have to go. If you want to stay with mommy, you can. But if you want to go with daddy, you can. You know, like giving her the option.
Right.
And she'd already showed reluctance to go and see the father. And then he would say, well, look, go in the house and I want to talk to my daughter. She's like, no, do it while I'm here. No, go and talk in there. And then she starts like bad mouthing him, saying, you're always doing this. You're always trying to manipulate me.
Mm-hmm.
And putting him down in front of the child. And I heard the whole tape, and you could tell he was trying to, look, you just go in the house, I'll speak to them, and I'll come back and speak to you. She was like, I want to know what you're saying. I want to know what you've said, because I don't want you causing any trouble and telling lies, like in front of this girl. She was only 6 at the time.
Jesus.
So and the child was the child's 8 at the time. They're now 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 2 years. And that day it was so upsetting, Dan, because that child went with the mother and the other child went with the father. So you've now separated the children. I think the little girl, felt split between the two parents, and you could see that the loyalty was for mum because she ended up staying. But
yeah, in a matter of speaking, that's another typical tactic, right? Forcing the child to choose between the two parents. So in this case, it sounds like the two children were forced to choose who they wanted to go with, in some manner of speaking, right? And one chose one way, one chose the other, which then creates conflict between those two children potentially. And that's why I say people don't understand the depth and breadth that this has, because those two children are now later on, when mom and dad aren't around, you're going to be talking to each other going, well, why did you choose dad? Why did you choose mom? You were wrong, blah, blah, blah. And potentially create a fracture in their relationship. It's scary how when you really sit back and think about these things and the depth of it, it's insidious, to be honest with you.
Well, if you look at the clinical term for parental alienation, it's psychological splitting. And when the alienating parent tries to turn the other parent against them, so she's in complete control, there'll be a point, if you think about this, Don, there'll be a point where the child's mind is in living in two different worlds.
Yep.
One world they'll love the dad, one world and they love the mom. In the other world, they're being taught to to be strongly in line to a point where it's not healthy with the mother, and to not love the father. Now, a child can't live in two worlds. So the child would have to pick a side. You'd have to pick a side.
Mm-hmm.
And the child will always pick the side of the dominant alienating parent. And that's why they call it psychological splitting, because you split between the two. You split you between the mother and the father, or the alienator and the alienated. And that's where the loyalty comes from. So yeah, so bad mouthing, I obviously, oh, your dad's this, your dad's that, or your dad doesn't love you.
And it
Look, your
may not
dad,
even
your dad's late.
yeah,
Yeah,
it might not even be direct if you are bad
yeah,
mouthing the other parent, say to a friend or something like that, and the child overhears it. I'll
yeah,
give you another one, Simon, that I'm seeing daily on TikTok and some of the other social medias, which is these single mothers going online and bad mouthing the father.
yeah.
That
Exactly.
is parental alienation. So if you are ever watching social media and you see a woman come on and trash the father, oh, he doesn't pay his support, whatever it might be. They do this because they're looking at one to get clicks and likes, and they're going to get a lot of them. And a lot of you go girls, you tell it like it is, right? But the person that's going to be harmed more than anyone else is the child. And I actually confronted a couple of them. And one said, "Well, my child will never see it." And I want, you want to bet? Because the internet is forever. And maybe your child won't directly know about it, but his friend might see it, or his friend's parent might see it and ask him or her about it. And your child will eventually find out about it. And then they're going to have to deal with that in their mind because they love their
Yeah,
dad, but you're telling the world, not just the child, the world, he's a horrible person. They haven't even begun to study that level. And I think that's
no.
scary what could come from that.
Well, you're absolutely right, Don. I have seen it on TikTok. I think I remember a mother saying, like, being negative about the father, saying he's a deadbeat fathers, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but it was pretty negative. It was not very nice to watch. She got plenty of clicks though, and got
Millions.
lots of attention. Oh, yeah, got lots of attention, I'm sure. But here's the thing, Dan. 9 times out of 10, if I went to speak to that guy that she was talking about, he would tell me a completely different story, and he'd probably be heartbroken and in bits.
Can I correct
And
you?
he would put,
It's
yeah,
99. No, let me change it. 9,999
I,
out of 10,000 because I have
I
done
knew it.
exactly that. And I
Yeah,
have
have you?
the standard offer I have out to every single mother who does that is send me your ex's contact info. I will reach out to him. I will leave it up to him whether he wants to come on the podcast that you're on right now or if he wants
Yeah,
to speak to me privately. And I will get his side of the story and verify that what you,
yeah.
mom, are saying is true. Guess how many have taken me up on it of the hundreds
I,
I've challenged?
I was just about to say, how many numbers did you get?
I've done it. I've
Zero,
made that offer hundreds, if not thousands,
zero,
of times. Zero, not
zero.
one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so that speaks to what you're talking about.
Yeah. So just basically, in general, just bad mouthing, Dan. Like, everything you say to the child about the other parent is pretty negative.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't go through everything, but anybody who's going through any of that will understand, like, what's happening in their case, like what bad mouthing they're using on their child, and the tactic that they're using. Number two, Dan, is limiting contact. I'll tell you what. When you look at limited contact, most people will just think that they're trying to stop contact. But I've noticed a pattern in a few cases. For example, the mother might enroll the child in, let's say, horse riding on Monday, swimming on Tuesday, uh, ballet on Wednesday, church on Thursday, and they will try to make sure that their diary is filled up. So every time they call up and say, "Look, can I see my daughter or son tonight?" Yeah, no, they're at swimming tonight. You know they're swimming tonight. What about tomorrow? No, that she's horse riding. She's doing a competition tomorrow in horse riding, and it's like they try to fill up the diary to prevent contact. Um, Other ways of limited contact is I've noticed like even in the case that I'm in now, she had no reason at the beginning, Dan, to. I'll just give you a bit of background. So I was flicking through TikTok one day, and this video came up, and it was a guy crying his eyes out. I don't mean a guy just crying, Dan. He was sat in his car. It looked like a movie scene, right? He was sat in his car, broken, and he was saying, why are women so horrible? Why can't I see my kids?" And his voice. It really got to me. So I reached out to him, and I said to him, "Look, if you need any advice, give me a shout." He said, "Oh, he's got himself somebody, and he's fine." I said, "Okay, no problem." But bear this in mind when you're doing all your paperwork. Don't concentrate on trying to prove you're innocent. Just concentrate on the children. I said, "Your solicitor's probably getting you to reply to every single one of our allegations right now and lining their pockets." And he messaged me back saying, "That's exactly what she's doing." He got speaking to me within an hour, and he'd sacked his solicitor, and I've been helping him ever since. But he's gone through all of these tactics, like the bad mouthing. The example I gave you earlier was actually this guy limiting contact. So at the beginning, she didn't really have a reason to stop contact. She started by saying that the children don't like going on TikTok. So he was putting the children on TikTok, and they were like stood on his shoulders. And you know when you put someone on your shoulders and you let go on the stand and the balancer.
Right.
He,
Yep.
he stood there like that, and he's got a 6-year-old child on his shoulders. Or she might fall back and she'll catch him, or they'll do a little dance or something. It was sweet things like that. Anyway, she had a problem with that, and she said, "Look, the kids are fretting about being on TikTok, and I can see them being potentially in a situation what could be dangerous. If you don't take them off, if you keep putting them on TikTok, you won't see your children anymore." So I said, "Look, don't get into an argument." And he just basically said, "Look, they won't be going on TikTok anymore. That's done, no problem." And she stopped anyway. And she started to limit contact. Like strategy number 2 is limited contact. She started to stop FaceTime. She wouldn't let him FaceTime. She wouldn't let him speak to him on his birthday. She wouldn't let him write him letters. She wouldn't let him send him presents. She just wanted to argue about everything. So what we did is we asked her. Well, I asked her because I've written everything for this far, and I remember at the beginning I asked if she wanted to go through mediation and do something, get a professional involved, so they can both come to some kind of arrangement. And she said, "I'm not willing to go to mediation because the school have raised a safeguarding concern about you, so you can't see the children. I'm not willing to go to mediation." So I told them to do and this is important, guys. If you get any allegations from the police, like say that she's made an allegation to the police or social services, what you can do is you can get what you call, I don't know if you've got this in your where you are, Dan, but you've got a public access request.
Yes, we have an equivalent. Yes.
Yeah. You can go to the police and ask for everything that they hold on you, which they can't deny. It takes around 30 days. And you can do that with the school. You can do that with the social services. You can get the school, as long as you've got parental responsibility, which means you're on the birth certificate after 2002. Well, that was 22 years ago, so I don't suppose anybody is having parental alienation at the age of 18, starting at 18. So I don't think that would affect anybody. So most people would probably have parental responsibility. As long as they're on the birth certificate, they can get an access request, and we did just that. We went to the social services and the local authorities and the school, and it come back that the school had no idea what we were talking about. There was no safeguarding concern, and that's how it all started, and all the lies started. She did everything she could to limit contact. Another example, he used so one of his son plays football, and he was going to the football because she couldn't stop him. And she was going to the football, he was going to the football, And what she did is she spoke to the football manager and said that the children are upset and all the other parents are upset with Mike being there because he's upsetting people and being rude to people. And he didn't know anything about this. And before he knew it, he had been removed from the WhatsApp group for the football team for his son. And then the next time he went, the police turned up and she tried to have him removed. And he said, "Look, I'm just playing football. Sorry, I'm just watching my child play football." And the police said, "Look, there's nothing we can do about it. If you want to watch your child play football, then we can't do anything about it." And she left. The police left. But she would do everything, like try to stop him from. She would stop the communications with the football manager so that he didn't know when they were playing football and what date and what time. So,
if I could just interrupt 1 second with something, because I want to share just a little something with that. My mother did the same thing, same tactic. So I was playing Little League baseball, and my mother did very similar, and my father missed a game. My father never missed a game, ever. But we had a day where it was rained out, and I was 10 or 11 at the time, right? So they rescheduled the game. But my father, now this is all pre-internet. This is, when phones were still mounted to the wall with a cord and all that. My father never knew the game was rescheduled and didn't come. It's the first time, and to the best of my knowledge, I can't remember any other time he didn't come to a game. My mother hammered me with that. See, your father doesn't love you. He couldn't even change his schedule to come to your game, blah, blah, blah. It was a whole bunch of stuff. So it kind of portrays what your friend there that's going through the same thing. I guarantee you that mother was saying something to the child about the dad, either being at the games, not being at the games, whatever. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to interject that.
Well, while I was talking about the football, I know this is a bit further down the line, Dan, but there was one particular time when he went to the football and his child wouldn't come out to play football. This is obviously later down the line when it starts when all of this starts to manifest. So the child had said to the football manager, "I'm not coming outside." And he said, "Why?" Because Daddy's there, because he's there. And he said, "I'm not going out there because he might pinch me, he might steal me." So this child wouldn't go outside because he thought his father was going to steal him. It's just crazy when you think about it. What would any normal child think that their father can even steal them? When a child sees their father, they go, "Oh, father, dad," and run over. "Hi, dad," and that's how they feel. That's how they think. "Oh, there's my dad's come to see us watch football." They don't think, "Oh no, my dad's gonna put me in a car and steal me." And it just goes to show what must be put into these children's head
Yeah,
to
I mean,
think that way.
that's a typical tactic, right? Making the child believe the other parent is dangerous.
It's dangerous, yeah.
I mean, again, you start seeing how these tactics they're all separate, but they blend together, and it's very common to see where that scenario where a child, I'm not going to go out and play football. You call it soccer for us over in the States, because football's that real thing that we play on a 100-yard pitch. But it's when you see that, if you are a child or an adult that went through that as a child, this is what we're trying to say is think about this. If that scenario resonates with you, you were potentially alienated. Or if you're a mom or dad and you're dealing with that, that's a sure sign that alienation's going on.
And it also goes back to, it totally goes against nature again.
Again,
so
yes.
you'll notice something in your own case, Dad, that everything seems to keep going back to something. It keeps going back to the same things, the same manifestations, the same tactics. They're all linked. It just goes around in circles.
Yep.
Like I could give you 100 examples for each one, and they would just keep, and then they would start again, and it would just go around in a circle again. But I'm conscious of time.
Yeah, I know.
Obviously,
that's the point, right? As we're trying to cover all this, but it's helping people to understand what's going on, right? And putting it in real terms. But yes, you're right. Continue on.
I am conscious of time, Dan, so we can either speed up or we can we can do a part three.
No,
It's
let's
entirely
try and get it all in this one. But why don't you kind of
right.
keep going
Okay.
down the list? I'll stay quiet.
All right. Interfering communications. I think we've kind of covered that. They try and stop the communications by to the children. Like they'll stop the FaceTime. Um, yeah, I think we've kind of covered that, haven't we, done? Interfering with
I would
communication.
say we have. Yeah, absolutely.
Number four is interfering with symbolic communication. That's kind of the same, but obviously symbolic is uh, like making gestures without speaking. So, say the father's talking to the child, like saying something nice, "Oh, I love you" to the child. The mother could be like screwing her face up, and shrugging her shoulders, and just trying to make it look negative. So, symbolic communication is like uh, expressing yourself without speaking and expressing yourself in a negative way. Um, that's what I get from symbolic communications.
Yeah, I'll throw
I
one
don't know if
other.
you
I'll throw one other example in that I've ran into with a case that a guy I was helping not too long ago. The mother wouldn't allow the child. The child had a tablet, and the child
mm,
had pictures of the dad on the tablet.
yeah,
The
yeah,
mother removed them. Wouldn't allow the pictures.
yeah,
I would say that falls into that.
yeah, and taking pictures down in the bedroom
There's another one. Yep.
is another one. Yeah, not having any pictures of the father on the walls. Uh, well, I guess symbolic is just anything other than speech. So even hand gestures is another one. Uh, you can say a lot of negative things with hand gestures and facial expressions and body language. So they all show the child that there's something not quite right
Right.
with the father.
Yeah, the thing to keep in
Uh,
mind is I don't remember the exact percentage, but somewhere like 80-90% of communication between human beings is non-verbal. It's what your
non-verbal.
face expresses and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Withdrawal of love. I think you touched on that yourself, didn't you? Where the mum said, "Oh, your dad doesn't love you, and he's late again, and he's doing that because he doesn't care." So basically, it's just trying to convince the child that the target parent doesn't love that child.
Correct.
Um, and again, telling the child that the parent doesn't love him or her, forcing a child to choose. I kind of give you an example of that, Dan, earlier when the man came to the car and said, "Look, you can go home with dad, or you can come home with me." That for me is, especially in that scenario where they were both arguing, there was a bit of animosity, and children would have picked up on it. And then saying you can stay or go with your father, that child has to choose at that point. Um, and also to choose between one parent and another. So if the child chooses the alienating parent, um, they have to then give away the targeted parent because the children are being brainwashed or manipulated or whatever you want to call it into only being loyal to that one person and only be dependent on that one person.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, have you got any examples of forcing to choose?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
happened to you as a child?
well, I can think of dozens of them to be honest
There's,
with you, but
I,
uh,
I feel under pressure because I'm like
yeah,
I'm just going
a,
through them.
a classic one that I went through and I know many have is like you talked about scheduling the child for horseback riding lessons or whatever. That's
Mm,
one level, but there's another level where the alienating parent will schedule a special event, but target it for the time when the child's supposed to be with the other parent.
oh
Perfect
yeah,
example in my case was, I remember this is 50 years ago. I saw my father on Saturdays, okay? My mother, every once in a while, would say to me, "Hey, do you want our local?" It was called Storytown. It was an amusement park, which it was about an hour away from our house. "Would you rather go to Storytown with me today and go ride the
mm,
rides, or would you rather go see your father?"
yeah,
That's forcing the child to choose. It's all of the, again, they all dovetail into it. But there's another example. It's scheduling a special event during the time. Because she could have
yeah.
taken me on Sunday, wouldn't have been a problem. But she always had a reason that it was going to be on Saturday.
Well, what would you rather do, John? Would you rather go to Disneyland or go go to the library with your father. Well, if you,
Well,
it's
now it would be go to the
yeah,
library. But your point is
well,
valid, right? The child's
yeah,
always going to choose Disneyland.
yeah.
Always.
That's kind of what they're saying. Look, should we go to Disneyland? Should we go to theme park? We're gonna have lots and lots and lots of fun. We'll have loads of candy and sweets. And or do you want to stay with your father?
Right.
And yeah, the child doesn't understand anything other than I want to go to Disneyland.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like that. I seen something on TikTok. It was quite funny actually. So there was this there was this child sat at the table, and the father offered the child £10,000 in cash or a cookie, and you know which one he took.
The cookie
He
every
took the
time.
cookie.
Every time the
Yeah.
kid says he's
So
going to choose
yeah.
the cookie. Yep. Exactly. And that's a very common tactic that you'll see. By the way, it might be something like back in the day for us, going to McDonald's was a huge reward, right?
Yeah.
Um, if you don't go with your dad today, I'll take you to ice cream or McDonald's or something like that. And I lived with it. I saw it with my sister. I've seen it. I don't know how many times in the guys who are going through this that I work with and coach. It's a other than I'm going to argue that other than bad mouthing, I would probably say this is one of the most common, if not the most common, one that I've seen.
Yeah, definitely. Also, um, number 8 is creating the impression that the targeted parent is dangerous. Now, this one has to be present because if this one isn't present, they're not able to, in my eyes, alienate them. There has to be some kind of scare tactic there.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be. I don't think you can alienate a child just by saying your dad doesn't love you, because when they go and see the father, they feel loved and they get told they're loved, so they get told the opposite. So it would be just confusing for the child. But I think creating the impression that targeted parent is dangerous is a big one for me. Like the example I gave you earlier about the football.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We will never know, Dan, what she told that child to make him not want to go outside and get his water bottle. He wouldn't go to the side of the pitch to get his water bottle the following week
Mm-hmm.
because he was frightened his dad was going to be there. That's just crazy when you think about it. Considering they had an amazing relationship only several months earlier.
Right.
And in fact, I tried to get this bit of evidence in the court today because he was at court this morning. We found a recording of him asking if the children wanted to go on holiday next year to see Ronaldo, and the children were going, "Oh, Ronaldo!" The other ones saying they wanted to go and see some other player, and they were going to Spain, and they were high fiving and they were jumping. Yes, let's go and see Ronaldo next year. Can't wait, Daddy. 3 weeks later, this was during the Christmas holidays. This was just before the Christmas holidays. That recording took place at the school because at this point she wasn't letting the children see the father. So he was seeing the children in the school. The school had facilitated him to go down
Mm-hmm.
on school dinner times to see the children. So he was going down there. I told him to record, and he was going, "Do you want to go on holiday next year?" I said, "Yeah, yes, go on holiday. Yes, no, I can't wait." Right, that was the last day of the holidays. I think it was 3 weeks. The Christmas holidays over here.
Mm-hmm.
After 3 weeks, he didn't obviously see the children because he was seeing them in school because she wasn't allowing it. 3 weeks later, the children come back to school, and there was a safeguarding report raised by the school saying that the children, because he went back to school to see them on the daytime, like for the first time after the holidays, and the safeguarding report said that they were worried because the children were scared to come down and see him. And it was totally out of character, and they don't know where it's come from. But he hadn't seen him for that 3 weeks. So what we've done, Dan, is we're trying to get this bit of evidence in because we didn't know, we forgot we had it,
Mm-hmm.
to try and show that there's a 3 week window, because there's a fact finder here in the end of July, we found out today, and yeah, so we're trying to prove that that was pinpointing the time that it happened, because these children were excited to be with dad alone. They were excited to go into a different country without their mother and with their father only. And they were high-fiving. So there was no problem at that point. Yet 3 weeks later, with no contact with the father, they came back and they were saying, "I hate my father. I never want to see him and his family ever again. I wish you'd just go away and leave us alone."
Mm-hmm.
The only time I would see my father, or him, I should call him him, the only time I'd see him is if my sister went, and I would only go just to protect my sister. How did it go from, it's just shockingly bad, Dad, how it can go from that to that in 3 weeks.
In just 3 weeks.
It's
Yeah.
it's pick of the fingers. That's what happens.
Yeah.
The professionals say, I think they use the word seemingly overnight, you've had a loving relationship has gone to complete rejection. That's how it feels to the target parents.
And for that to happen, you have to kind of put yourself behind the scenes. What is that mother saying? And again, we don't know, but I'll just throw out a possibility, which is, well, your dad wants to take you to another country so that he can take you away from me and he'll never let you come back. Something like that. That would terrify a child. Wait, what? I'm going to, if I'm in England, he's taking me to Spain and I'm never going to come back to my home. Picture yourself as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old child and hearing something like that. That's how you do that in a short period. Hey fans, I just wanted to take a quick break from the show to remind you just how much we here at Men Need to Be Heard truly appreciate and value your support. And we'd like to ask you to do us a little favor. Could you take a moment and give us that like and share this video with your friends? And hey, don't forget to give us a comment and let us know how we're doing. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us to continue bringing great guests and even more content each and every week. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. It's the best way to stay up to date with all of our latest discussions, interviews, and deep dives, as well as it helps the channel to grow so that we can continue to raise even more awareness on the issues men and boys face in today's modern society. So hit that subscribe button and become part of the Men Need to Be Heard community. All right, that's it for now. Back to the show.
You could say that Spanish people are known to be stealing children, or they're dangerous to children. Spanish people. I'm not saying they are.
We're using an example. Just because they're not.
Just in case someone starts listening. But no, that's a perfect example. So that would put absolute fear immediately into the child.
Yeah, that's how they do it. That's how an example of how they can do it quickly. Right? Because 3 weeks time, I know most people listening to this are going, there's no way that can happen. And I understand why you would think that way, but I can assure you from personal experience and hundreds of people that I've gone through this, it can happen, and it does happen that easily and that quickly because these alienators know what to do, and they know just what button to push to get the child over the edge. Alienators are not stupid people. In fact, I've argued they're usually the most brilliant people. They are master manipulators. That's an example of it. What's the next one that you have on your list?
Confiding with a child. This is a difficult one because that would usually happen behind closed doors, Dan. So I'm not quite sure why this one is in, because although it probably does happen, it's going to be a struggle to try and prove this one. This is one of the ones that I can't prove.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to prove.
Because they would do it in private behind closed doors. So unless you had a witness or a recording of this happening, I don't know how you'd get that.
Yeah, it's tough to prove that one. The way I would put it, so that maybe someone who's not quite sure what we're talking about, is your relationship is not parent-child, it's friend-friend, right? So the alienating parent is treating the child as if they were like their bestie, right? So if it's a mom doing it, she's saying to the child and trying to get the child to interact as if it was the same scenario as, say, her sister or, best friend, coworker, or something like that. That's where that comes in. It's damn near impossible to prove. But the only way you can really tell that I know of, and I'm no expert on this particular one, but is if the child is talking about the alienating parent, the non-targeted parent, in the same manner, like as a friend, instead of mom, it's my bestie,
Yeah,
right, type thing. But even then, you just don't know. It's that's a tough one.
they seem to have a weirdly close relationship
Yes,
as well.
it's a great way to put it. Excellent way to put it.
Yeah, they're weirdly close. Um, Asking the child to spy, yeah, we've done that one. So asking the child to keep secrets from the targeted parent. This is the other one I couldn't prove because she's not likely to tell the secrets from the alienated parent, is it? So I don't know how you
That
would probably evidence this one or
that's
even
where
know
a
this one.
third party can help. So if you have
Third
in the
party, yeah,
United States, a guardian ad litem is involved, Cathkis over in your area, somewhere like that. That's you and I as a targeted parent. It can be tough because you don't know if it's a secret. They're not going to tell you. But sometimes I have seen where a third party, could be a psychologist for that matter, a teacher at school, the child will confide that secret to that third party, and then somehow it can get out that way. But that, again, tough one, and one of the
yeah,
most effective ways to alienate a child, I might add.
yeah. I could give you an example from my own case. So, my daughter has quite often come home and said, "I've got." If you tell my daughter a secret, she can't wait to tell somebody that secret. So the first thing
Exactly.
she'll do when I say, yeah, first thing she'll do when I see her, because our relationship's fine now. There is some scarring from it, but I think we're absolutely fine at this point. It's
Mm-hmm.
been a few years since my case. But she'll walk through the door when I first see her, and she'll say, "Guess what? I've got a secret that I'm not supposed to tell you." And she'll say, "Mommy's bought a new house and we're moving, but I'm not supposed to tell you until after we've moved." And yeah, so that there is times when I've heard that myself, but in the case that I'm working on now, we can't evidence that one. So they're the two we couldn't evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to speed up a bit, Dan, because it's the manifestations that are more important.
Yep. Go ahead.
I think. Uh, Referring to the targeted parent by his first name, so I think that's quite obvious what that is, Dan. So uh, referring to a step parents, mum and dad. So if the alienating parent gets say it's the mother, gets a new partner, they try and get that children to call that person dad
Yep. Very common tactic.
or mum, and then try and and goes with 14, goes with number 13, try and then make the child call the dad by their name. Um,
Or the example you gave earlier, when the young girl referred to her dad as him.
yeah, she
It's
does that all the time.
yeah, it's dehumanizing the parent as a parent. In other words, othering them into
Yeah,
some other form.
definitely. Yeah. Um, Withholding medical, academic, and other important information from the target parents, keeping the target parent's name off any medical, academic, and other relevant documents. So, in the case that I'm working now, and my own case, the mother wouldn't share medical records. For example, do you know I touched on earlier, Dan, about going to the hospital and the doctors for a public access request?
Mm-hmm.
I asked him every time I get a client to work with, I say I want to see police records, I want to access requests on every single person. Right. What came back when we got his case done is that the children's elbow elbow joints and shoulder joints had been dislocated 7 times between them, and he didn't know about any of it. And that was really worrying. The
That's a
worrying thing
sure sign
is,
of child abuse, potentially, at least worthy of an
so
investigation.
So just to let you know, the fact find hearing on in a couple of months, there's also a fact find hearing on parental alienation and physical abuse. Um, the worrying thing for me with this one is that he didn't know, she didn't tell him. And when I've obviously been doing a statement, so I've been calling her out at every single angle I can possibly see, right? To get to the bottom of this. And she's actually wrote a statement explaining what's happened on each one, but it doesn't correspond with the medical records. So, for example, on one of them, she said that she was walking across the road and he slipped, and and when I had hold of his hand, his shoulder dislocated. But then the medical record showed on that day that she said the child fell down the slide at a park. And it's just not adding up. I'm not accusing somebody because we can't prove it, but it doesn't add up. Nothing she's saying adds up. So definitely, guys, you straight away, I would keep an eye on your medical records. If she isn't willing to share them, that's a form of control. But also, you could get your medical records, and your daughter something could have happened to your son or daughter that you actually don't know about. Remember, you might not have seen your kids for 6 months or a year. They could be, if they're psychologically abused, there's nothing to say they're not being physically abused.
Right.
So, and you wouldn't know this, unless you got a public access request. And if you found like this guy did, two children, two different sexes, two different ages have dislocated their arms, one 6 times, one time, and they've all been different joints. You know yourself, Dan, being in the sports world, yeah, that if you dislocate your shoulder, you'd probably be likely to do it again within the first month or so.
Yeah, it's very common. Yeah, they tend to be repetitive. Yeah,
I think it's called a soft shoulder, isn't it?
It is.
But this was both shoulders, elbows, both children. And he did tell me that she'd had a temper, and she once went to pick up the children, and they were playing up, and she grabbed the arm of the kids, pulled them, and he said he didn't know what to do with himself. He wasn't very amused, but didn't say anything. He thought it was just a one-off, so he let it go. This was years ago. But now he's read that, he's like, I wonder if she'd done it. And also on the medical records, it says that she pulled him off the bed because he was in a tantrum. And on the medical, sorry, that's what it says. That's what it says in the medical records. But what she's told the court, because I questioned her about it, is that he was carrying some drinks at a fair and fell over. Well,
two entirely different things.
Yes, yeah. Like a mother would know if their child hurt themselves, dislocated a joint, it would be quite scary for a mother, and they would remember why they've done it.
Yeah, any reasonable mother would know that. Just want to throw in a quick caveat for those of you in the States, because the UK is a little different law, but to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not a lawyer, but in the States, if you have parental rights in any form, and you go to a medical professional or the school and are denied access to those, you have a legitimate case to go to family court and say, I am being denied access. Those providers or the school cannot deny you that without a court order. So if that has happened to you, the very first thing you need to do is file a motion in family court. And let me tell you, my friends, because I've been there, judges do not like that one. If they find that, because I actually had a school official I subpoenaed, and I put her on the stand. I handled this one myself, and I said, why did you deny me access to my child's education records? Well, Mom told me that she had a court order. Did you see the court order? No. So you took her at her word. I'll just leave it with this. The judge was livid.
Yeah.
And it ultimately was one of the reasons I ended up with custody. But anyway, we're watching our time here, Simon. What's the next one?
Yeah, I was just going to say in this country, I don't know what it's like for you over there, but like I said, all we need to do is do a public access request. By law, you can't be denied, so we don't have to go to court to get access to that. We get it. So if I contact the police now and say I want a public access request and everything you hold on me, by law they have to give me it. They would be breaking the law not doing that.
Yeah,
so
it's a little. They're more the reverse. You have to have your rights taken away here, and otherwise you have access. Again, there may be exceptions and little nuances to it, but in general, what I'm saying is, if you are a parent, you have absolute right to your child's medical and educational information, and if you are denied it, you have a legitimate motion to go to the court.
Yeah. Number 16, Dan, is changing the name to remove association with targeted parent. I've seen this a few times. As soon as two parents start to argue or disagree on contact and things, it is quite common, even in non-alienated cases, for a mother to say, "I want to change the name to hers.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't got the father's second name anymore. That is quite common, and it's probably happened in every single case that I've worked on.
I've also
Actually,
seen where
most
they've gone to the hyphenated name, which I
yeah,
that one
double
I gotta.
barrel.
If I'm being honest, I don't necessarily have a problem with the hyphenated. It's a lot of writing,
Yeah,
all right, but at least they're not trying to take away the child's quote unquote last name. The other instance is
yeah.
what you're talking about when they overtly are saying, "Well, the child was named Smith. We're going to make it Jones now." That's a sure sign of it.
Cultivating dependency. So the alienating parent job is to make the child completely depend on that person, um, to be able to uh, put distance between the the child and the targeted parent. So they would obviously need full dependency on that on the mother, for example, if they were the alienating parent. Um, should we go through
I think that
the
was all of the tactics, right?
that was the yeah
Yeah,
yeah
let's dive in because I want to make sure we've got about 30 or so minutes here. Let's dive
yeah
in because I want to make sure we cover this to the eight
because
manifestations.
yeah, this is where my case would come into play. I wanted to speak a bit more about the case, but we obviously haven't got the time to do that. I would like to speak to the viewers about this guy's case. Like I said, I haven't really touched upon it yet, but the case is horrendous, and it's difficult to remember everything as we're talking, and we keep talking about different things.
Well, why don't we
Um,
start with why don't you list what the eight manifestations are, and then maybe start talking about the case and how they apply to each of those manifestations. Maybe that'll be a little bit
well,
easier way to do it.
actually, um, each one is there's a part of this on the case. So first one is campaign of denigration, strong or utter rejection of one parent, willingness to tell others, erasing past positive aspects of the relationship and memories. So in this case, a social worker went to see their children, and I said this on part one that they have ways of playing games and things. So what the social worker did was have a series of negative words like sad, unhappy, unsafe, these kind of words. And they had also another bunch of words that was safe, happy, great, and good, for example. And what happened is that they brought mum down and they brought dad down, and they asked the children to put the words which describe each parent. Obviously, dad was all bad words,
Mm-hmm.
and mother was all good words. Um, so that's an example. I could give a few examples of it, but we'll try and get through them first, Dan.
Yep.
Um, willingness to tell others. So a lot of our evidence was in the Kafkas report. Um, the social worker actually wrote down that both children had no qualms whatsoever of talking negatively about the father. So they were quick to tell her how much they hated him, how horrible he was, how disgusting of a human being he was, and how much they didn't want to see him, and they wished they would go away. And the willingness to tell her was recorded by that social worker. She was actually newly qualified, and although she were using 90% of her her report, for evidence, um, she was newly registered as a social worker, but I didn't like her. I didn't like her Section 7 report. I didn't like her recommendations. Her recommendations were that she had a gap in her understanding, and that she didn't believe it was parental alienation. But then she agreed that the parental alienation tooling came out mild, and I went after her and said, "Look, how did you come to this conclusion? How did you come to that conclusion?"
Mm-hmm.
And I started throwing a few facts at her. And the next time we went to court, she actually stood up and said, "Judge, I'm way out of my depth. I can't treat this case and I'm going to step away." So she actually withdrew
Let's give her
her
credit for
statement.
doing that then, because
And yeah,
most of them would
yeah,
not do
absolutely.
that. They will never admit they're wrong. My experience.
No, no, she did. And that's how we got what we call it in England, a 16.9 guardian. So the guardian would enter proceedings of the voice of the children.
Hmm.
Uh, Another thing, so as part of number one is erasing past and positive aspects of the relationship. She also recorded that the children said, like she'd obviously go there and she would speak to them for a couple of hours, get to know their trust, play games, try and get to the bottom of things. So she would document everything. And she documented on the Section 7 report, which is obviously a child report for the court, right? I don't
Hmm.
know if you've got Section 7 reports. You probably got,
We have something
they're probably
similar.
called
Yeah,
something
they
else.
call them different, but
Yeah.
they're essentially the same thing.
Yeah, they all have different numbers for different things. Yeah, so trying hard not to say a name because when I'm talking to
Yeah, be
the
careful with
father
that.
about it, I'm using the names all the time, and it's why I keep licking my lips.
Yep.
Yeah, so she recorded that the children, like she was talking to the children, do you remind me of a time when you had a nice time with your father, and the children couldn't remember a single time. I can't remember a single positive memory that I had with my father. Both children said that. So there is some strong evidence that cover number one in this case. And obviously, there's all cases are different, but if you do go to the eight manifestations, your viewers can read that and see if it follows their case.
Yeah, I
Um,
will put links in the show notes to all of
yeah,
this
yeah,
so that you can go and look at it. But just to chime in on what you're saying about, I actually had something said to me similar to that, which was, can you name any, not a particular event, but can you name anything positive about your father? My mother
yeah.
was sitting right next to me at the time. Well, of
See,
course I
well,
wasn't going to say anything positive because I knew who I was going home with that night, right?
yeah,
Again, a
exactly.
little different, but not so different.
Yeah. So yeah, they couldn't remember a single solitary memory of their father. So before she went to see him, she asked the father for some pictures or an item, for example, to take with her. And because at this point we'd already accused the other side of alienating,
Hmm.
and I think if I remember rightly, she showed her a picture of the dad uh, on a quad bike. They were playing on a quad bike, and then another one where they were stood in a park, and the dad was in the middle, and one child was one side, one child was the side. They were both smiling, and one of the children said that I was just pretending. I was just pretending to smile. So, and I think when you have a look at the difference between an alienated child, Dan, and an abused child, like we said earlier, an abused child will always have some or or a memory, a positive memory, or some positive memories of the abusive father or the abusive parents.
Correct.
In an alienated case, it's almost like it erases the memories. That doesn't happen in an abused child. It happens usually. It's a huge red flag an alienated child where they won't remember a single good memory of that parent because they've been completely brainwashed.
Right.
Which is quite interesting when you think about it. That this is that powerful and it does that much damage that it erases their memories. Like
It
it's just
reprogram it
crazy.
reprograms them in a matter of speaking.
It's crazy when you think about it, isn't it? It would like
It's
how do you erase somebody's memory?
it's
Yeah,
scary, to be honest with you, how easily it can be done too. By the way, we could do an entire show just on that. Because I have spoken to some experts on that particular scenario in the past, more so with
yeah,
domestic violence, right? Is how do victims of domestic violence, if you actually talk to someone that is at least, because I used to be a peer counselor for domestic violence, if someone is on the journey to healing, I'll go that way. You'll be able to say to them, "Can you name at least something positive about your, ex?" And they'll just say,
mm,
"Oh, when we first start dating, blah 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 blah." When they are
exactly.
so walled off and not ready to heal, they will go, "There is nothing positive," right? And I remember talking because I am not a psychologist, but I had one that I could refer people to, and I had this conversation with her, and she said That's what's going on there is they are not ready to heal yet, right? They
Yeah,
absolutely need help to get there, and that's beyond my depth. But that's a sign of it, right? Is when there's no positive memory whatsoever, in a matter of speaking, like you said, they've been brainwashed. I say reprogrammed, same thing, along those lines, and that's a very bad thing for a child.
absolutely. It's crazy when you think about it. I've often sat and thought about what a child must be going through for that to happen. Like I idolized. I had a good father, and a good mother. Well, I've still my mother's gone now, but I've got my father's a gentleman, and like to go around and badmouth him. What kind of where would my head have to be to go around telling everybody that I hated my father and he was
Yeah,
disgusting and
it's.
horrible and a monster, and I can't remember a single memory. Everything that I remember is horrific.
I do have
And
one
yeah,
question about your dad. Does he have the mustache though?
no.
I got to throw a little. We're talking on a serious subject, but every once in a while we got to throw a little humor in because it's the only way we're going to get through
Yeah,
it, right? So
I've
I'm
never I've
sorry.
never seen him with a beard. He's got a bit more hair than me.
Well, there you go. I'm sure he lets you
I
know
had
that too.
I had a hair transplant last year, Dan.
Did you really? I
Yeah, it's still
I
it's still growing in.
I did not.
I've had a, I looked like you for 25 years.
Hey, bald is beautiful,
Any,
baby.
anyway,
Anyway,
so weak and frivolous is number two. Observe reasons for the rejection. When pressed to explain the rejection, will give reasons that do not make sense or explain the level of animosity. Are false memories. So, to give you an example of that in this case, so the children said, I hate him. I don't want to see him. I wish he'd stay away from me and my family. Don't send me letters. I don't want him to bribe me with Christmas presents. And when the children were asked why, they said, because he puts me on TikTok.
hmm
Ridiculous. That's weak. That's a weak reason to. You can't completely reject your father because you put him on social media.
right,
You
right.
might you might as well say I never want to see my father again because he wears a silly blue jumper.
Well, I
So
mean, one case that I'm aware of is they were saying things like I'm trying to remember the exact way to put it. Um, yeah, I don't like my dad because he took me to I forget where it was, some event. It wasn't like a
mm,
child thing, it was more of an adult, like a party type thing. And so therefore I hate my father because he made me go to that. You know,
yeah.
that's not normal.
So lack of ambivalence. For the most part, one parent is seen all good while the other is viewed all bad. So the example I give you with the board game, that the children viewed the father as all bad and the mother as all good. So what's healthy in a child? A child should be able to see mostly good in mum and some bad in mum because nobody's perfect. The child should be able to see that, oh, mum's great, but she makes us do our homework, and dad's great, but he makes us brush our teeth. So they should have some strong feelings, positive feelings towards the parents, but there has to be feelings where they think uh, mum could be better or dad could be better. In an alienating child, you usually find that the the targeted parent, they would think complete negative thoughts of the targeted parent, but the alienated parents uh, can't do a damn thing wrong. Like they're
Right.
absolutely perfect. They have no flaws. A child should be able to see both parents' um, good traits and their flaws, whereas an alienated child would just see one and the other,
And I'll
which is
throw
a
an example
yeah.
of how that can backfire on somebody who's committing parental alienation. My mother, go ahead, ask me the question. Ask me if there's anything positive I have to say about my mother. Come on.
Well, on number one, you said when she died, I punched the hair with excitement. So
There is
give
not
me
there is not one positive thing I can say about my mother. Not one. And my sister is the same way. So when you see it as, the targeted parent gets rejected by that, when there's let's call it an awakening, it can go 180 back. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying that I should be that way. And maybe there's, I haven't healed completely. But I've had people say, come on, your mother wasn't that bad. There must be something you liked about her. No. She
So
is
you,
Satan to me.
so you honestly, it sounds stupid now you've said that. Now you said Satan, but
Satan.
you, you, you.
Satan would be a step up from her, Simon. That's my
So,
actual feeling.
so at your age now, you can't actually remember a single memory that you felt just for 1 second
Nope. I can't.
in a
And I'm being
positive.
totally
No,
honest right now. There is nothing.
that's
Even things that like Christmas, right? Okay, she gave me the gift that I wanted one Christmas. Back in 1976, it was the bicentennial in the US. All the rage was this one race car set, electric race car set that, I was 13 at the time. That's what I wanted. My mother gave it to me. You would think that should be a positive memory, right? It's a negative. Why? Because she made damn sure I knew that it was her that gave it to me, not my father. So again, you're right. I get your point, but I can always come up with a way, and I'm not saying I'm right to do that, to make it a negative. And it's just when you hear me, for those listening, when you hear me talking about my mother that way, this is how an alienated child would talk about the targeted parent, right? I have
yeah.
no positive memory, and I'm sure I'm wrong to say that, and I'm not afraid to say that I'm wrong to say that, but it is exactly how I feel.
You know what, Janet? Like, if I hadn't learned over the last few years about parental alienation, and I heard you say that, I would probably secretly think to myself, "What an idiot!" Because
I've had
what I
people question my sanity because
what could
I'm not shy about saying it,
yeah, I bet there's a lot of people would be thinking to themselves, "How could anyone speak to their about their own mother like that?" But
especially a mother.
yeah, especially a mother, yes. But guys,
It's I've had my sanity questioned more than once, Simon.
I'm just trying to explain to the guys that who aren't experiencing parental alienation or haven't experienced it and do think like, "Oh, how can he say such a thing about his mother?" But they don't understand the damage, the damage that parental alienation can do to a child. Like listening to you now, you're 61 years old.
Yep.
It must have had a huge, significant impact on your life throughout your entire life because of these her actions.
Yeah, and I've talked
And
about it before. The biggest one that I have is that I can never trust anyone. I'm I don't care how good they are to me. I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop. They're going to do something to me.
yeah,
I can never
and
have
that's
the depth of a relationship that I should be able to have. And I'm, for the most part, healed. I know people are going to go, no, you're not, but I am. Um, I've had professionals tell me that. No, but it's that doubt is always there, right? Okay, well, they say they love me, they show me they love me, but do they really, or are they just
yeah.
pretending?
I
So
guess you're yeah, I guess you're constantly questioning and waiting.
always.
Yeah, and that's pretty sad. It's pretty well. It's pretty sad if you think about it. That maybe if you didn't go through that, you would have trusted somebody and you would have made more friends. For example, you relationships might have worked
And
better.
I'll give you another example how it affects. If somebody who I was friends with someone for 52 years, and she didn't like my political leanings towards a certain person, okay? And she said something pretty nasty to me. I have not spoken to her since, right? That's an extreme example, but if someone, for lack of a better term, does something to me that you might say, that was horrible that you did that to me, but I'll forgive you. I won't forgive. You're done. I will never speak to you again. I mean, it's cut and dried with me. I don't have
So you
the ability to step back and say, all right, I know they were wrong. They were horrible to me. I'm completely justified to feel they were horrible. All that. I'll forgive them. I don't have that ability. And I
so you can't
directly
you
relate it to the
yeah.
alienation.
So now when someone makes a mistake and upsets you, regardless of how long you've known them, you would just go, right, that's me done, goodbye, and you would never speak to them again.
Pretty much.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about it, isn't it?
And the funny thing is up here I know that's wrong, that I shouldn't
Yeah.
be that way. Down here is a whole other story. And even though I'm conscious of it and I do everything I can to avoid it, in the end, it depends on
It
to
just,
the
it just,
depth. It just wins out. It just wins out.
well, I'll try not to upset you for that one.
It's the best way I can put it is if the trust is broken, you'll never get my trust back again.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people like that, but not to that extent. I'm a bit like that.
I'm extreme like
If
that.
Yeah, if all the friends that I've had are lifelong friends,
Mm.
and the friends that have just come into my life got on my nerves and lied and let me down, I just say I'm not interested. So I don't have many of them friends where where they just come into your life and there's somebody you play pool with or have a drink with. My friends, I've either not got any or they're lifelong friends.
Yeah,
there's no in between with me.
I'm the same way. I have, the friends that
Yeah,
I do have, I am very close to.
yeah,
But I only honestly have three what I would consider true friends. I have acquaintances, don't get me wrong, but true people that I call my ride or dies or the people I want to be in a foxhole, three, and
yeah.
that's
I
it.
think I've got two. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm two.
So,
Yeah.
let's because we're getting short on time. Let's get to the next one.
Yeah. What time do we have to leave? Done.
We
So I
got about
can.
another 15 minutes, give or take.
Right. So independent thinker phenomenon. The child strongly emphasizes that the favored parent played no role in the child's rejection. So obviously, everything that the children say usually comes from the adults. Kids don't just suddenly make up some scheming plan in the middle of the night to think, well, I'm going to say all these things about my father just so I don't have to see him. It is being put into the child's mind by an adult. But if the child is ever questioned, they would they would be adamant that that's their own thoughts and feelings, and not the mother's or the alienator's thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
great.
again, yeah, sorry, go
A
on.
great way to spot that is listen to the verbiage the child is using. If it's adult verbiage and they're an 8-year-old, that means they've been coached.
Yeah, I'm going to skip over the next two quickly because the next one's quite important to me. Not the next one, but number 7. This is we're at number 6, I think. No, we're not 5. Reflective support of the alienating parent and the parental conflict must always takes the favoured parent's side in all disagreements. Again, that's kind of linked to number 4, isn't it?
Yep, they're all
Where they,
intertwined. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, number 6, absence of guilt. Appearing to have no qualms about cruel and harsh treatment of the rejected parent. Like I said earlier, Dan, the children were like, "Get him away from me! I hate him." They show no guilt. Like I couldn't if I had an argument with my father, for example, and I phone you up and I say, "Damn me, dad's this, me dad's that. I hate him." As soon as I calm down, within a few minutes, I'll be like, "I feel really terrible.
Right.
I've just made my dad to be a terrible person. Yet he's my hero. He's amazing." And I'd probably call you back and say, "Do you know what, Dan? My dad's fantastic. Ignore everything I just said out. He's a fantastic guy." But children don't have that ability. Like an alienated child, because their brains wash so much, they don't care about the father's feelings because they don't feel like they have any feelings towards
Right.
the alienated parent. So they can quite easily, with like no empathy whatsoever, they could go up to their face and say, "Dad, I hate you," and walk off. And they ain't losing no sleep over it.
Right. Yeah, perfect.
They
That's a
lose, yeah,
perfect example of it, right? So we're all parents. If you've been a parent, at some point your child has screamed at you, "I hate you."
yeah.
2 seconds
And
later,
that,
they're in your arms
and,
hugging you, right? That's what a
Joe,
normal
yeah,
child will do. They may scream the words, but minutes or an hour, whatever it might be, it's forgotten. They're back in your arms. They're loving you. An
yeah.
alienated child will not do that. They'll
You
just
could
keep.
have an argument with a child, and they say, "I hate you, Dad." They'll come back down in 2 minutes and say, "Daddy, can I have some ice
Yeah,
cream?"
exactly.
Yeah, and
That's a
yeah,
normal
that's
childhood behavior.
yeah. Whereas a child can actually say such harsh things and walk off with no problems. and share this willingly with professionals, and actually go out of their way, like they enjoy telling people how terrible their father is. They're actually enjoying saying these things to professionals, like, I hate my father, he's horrible, and he doesn't treat me very nice, and I can't trust him, and I'm not safe around him. Yeah, they have shown no guilt. Like, I've obviously not. I've never met this guy's children.
Mm-hmm.
I love these. I love these two. Do you know what? I was going to say this to you earlier. I fell in love with these two kids. They are 6 and 8. They're now. Sorry, they were 6 and 8. Now they're 7 and 10, nearly 8 and 10. And I love these two kids. I've spent so much time working with them, even though I've never met them. And they are saying to, like, I've seen videos of how amazing they are. I've seen videos of him spending time with them. So I feel like I know them because I must have said their names a million times in letters. And it's difficult for me to hear the social workers saying, I hate Dad, I hate him, I wish he'd stay away from me. And it really gets to you, Dan, like, because I could see how much them children loved this guy before. I can see that she's followed all of the strategies. The kids are showing all of the manifestations. I could sit here all day and give you 3 or 4 examples if we had more time of every single one. In fact, if I went through the whole case, every time I opened my mouth would be one of the 8 or the 17.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they've shown no guilt whatsoever towards that. He wrote them a letter, and the social worker wrote down that she given the children the letter, and the children wouldn't even open it, and that the letter had to go outside. The letter was not allowed to be in the house. It had to leave the premises. It had to be escorted out of the door, and it had to be nowhere near the house.
That breaks my heart.
This was the letter. In fact, Jan, I hope you don't mind.
No.
But I've got it here. It takes me 20 seconds to read it, and I promised him I would read it on this.
Go ahead.
He plans to.
I want you to read it because I want, we've got a few minutes left. The one thing we've kind of covered all the things we wanted to, but I want to talk about now the effects that alienation has, and on the kids, on the targeted parent, and even on the aggressor.
Well,
but read that letter, please do.
It's soul destroying, Dan. I have seen it. Like it was only the night that I had just this week. Dan, I've had 3 people bawling down the phone to me about how they can't move on, if you know what I mean, like unalive themselves. Yeah, it is absolutely soul destroying. It destroys the children, and even the examples you've given us. You're 61, and this happened when you were before your teens.
Yep.
And it's still, you still can't trust a single person. That must have had a huge impact on your life, your work, everything you've ever done, relationships.
It's why I've been married 3 times.
This absolutely destroys children. Yeah, I was just going to quickly say, Dan, because there is number 7 and 8. So basically, the children use adult words, so they would mimic the alienating parents' words.
Yep, the adult language.
Yeah, and rejection of extended family. That's happened because she got a court order to try and get the paternal grandmother out, which was awarded and then quickly taken away. But I do have a letter. I've been dreading this, Dan, because it breaks my heart.
I'm trying to steel myself because I've seen letters like that, and I know I don't know exactly what's coming, but I kind of know. So go ahead.
Before I read it out, I just want to say to him that I'm going to do everything I can. I haven't charged this guy a single penny, Dan, and I've done everything. I have lived every moment of this 2 years with him, and I've felt every moment, and I felt his pain. And if we ever do another show, we can go into the emotional side of it better. I feel as if we've been rushed today and trying to just go through all the seriousness of it all. But if we can do some another day, we could go through how it actually does affect children, and like statistics of like how they turn into criminals and alcoholics and raging lunatics, and there's just so many things that they go down a completely different path. If you look at the statistics of an alienated child, uh, it's pretty negative. There's a lot of things that happen in adulthood from the
You want to know
alienating.
another thing they turn into? I'm gonna blow your
Well,
mind with this one. Feminists. If you and you're laughing, but if you actually go and look, I wish somebody would do a study on this at how many
yeah,
feminists, not all, I don't want to make it seem like it's all, but it's a significant number, have bad relationships with their father. And when they'll say that, well, my father treated me, blah, blah, blah. But if you delve into it, and I have with a couple of them, well, more than a couple, but a few, um, they were alienated. So
yeah.
that's why they have the viewpoint they do. I'm not saying
Well,
they don't they might not want to fight for equality and all that. Absolutely, but when they are the ones that are viciously attacking men, almost always my postulation, my theory, my all of that is that if you really delved into it, and I wish to God somebody would study it, you would find
mm,
almost inevitably they were an alienated child.
it's interesting, isn't it? Like it just changes your complete perspective on females if you're an alienated male.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it goes both
and
ways. It goes both ways.
yeah, right.
All right, let's do it, my friend.
So
I know we're both dreading it, right? But it needs to be done.
um, it's because it. You know what it is, Dan? I feel this guy every time. Every time I phone him, I speak to him every day.
Yeah,
This is like he's become one of my close friends. In fact, I'd say I've got three now.
because of him.
Um, yeah,
All right.
right. We have been kept apart, and I want to tell you both that this is not your fault. And one day soon, hopefully, we will get back together, making special memories like we did before. Me and Bronco, the dog, have been sat alone watching movies, hoping that you would both walk down the drive and come and spend time with us like we always have since you were born. From the second you stopped coming to Daddy's, I have been very much upset every day. So I started a new hobby, and that's to climb mountains and go in caves. As, as I, sorry, caves, as I can, whilst waiting for you both to come back home where you belong, safe with Daddy. I can't wait to show you the pictures. I have decorated your bedroom too, and I can't wait to see the look on your faces when you see how cool the rooms are. And also, Santa's left you many presents for you that are still unopened. Anyway, I know you won't get this letter for a little time longer, but I want you both to know that Daddy and Nana and Simon are trying, yeah, are trying everything possible to get you home, and it won't be long, I promise. I love you both loads and loads. And there's a little paragraph from Nana to my little jelly monster and my football hero. It's been 2 long years since I've seen you. I miss you more every day that goes by. Me, Daddy, and Simon are doing everything we can to get you back. It's been a roller coaster of emotions so far. We feel we've climbed at every mountain and swum every sea to get where we are right now. But hopefully the end is near and we'll be back together soon. Your cousins talk about you every day and look forward to the day that you all play football again. It's been so heartbreaking and many sleepless nights have passed. I wish I could just hold you in my arms again because a piece of me feels missing without you. Love you always and forever. Nana. I did it.
You got through it, but you got me, my friend. Just so you know.
Oh,
I
man.
mean, it's just we got to wind things down now, but and maybe this is the absolute right time to do so because listening to those words as both a child who was alienated and as a parent who was alienated from a couple of children, they hit home with me. Right? It's
Yeah.
the heartbreak, the pain in those
Mm,
words. Understand if you're listening to this, that's what all targeted parents feel. It's Also, how the children feel. They may not know it right now, but as I sat and listened to them, those words, I was kind of like putting myself more into when I was a child. And I kind of had the thought in my mind, what if I had gotten that letter from my dad, right? That was kind of where I was at with it. And my dad did everything he could to rebuild our relationship. You'll never hear me say a negative thing about it. We never fully rebuilt it because the trust had been destroyed at that point. And it's not his fault. I'm not faulting him. But hearing that level of pain in his words and the grandmother's words, I hope if you take nothing away from watching this show, that you hear that pain, because it's not just his pain, it's his children's pain.
Yeah.
It's the pain of every targeted parent. If you want to understand, truly understand, why 40% of the men who kill themselves, it's because they go through family court. Those words right there are the reason why. Because at some point, many people can't handle that pain. It sounds to me like he found a little outlet with the mountain climbing and all that. Thank God.
Well,
And he has
yeah.
you. But a lot of guys, and if you're listening to this and you're a guy going through this, get some help. Whether it's a professional, a friend, find some. My go-to is pounding iron or playing guitar, whatever. Some way to try and help you cope, because it's a black hole you can fall into. And trust me, and I know Simon knows this because he talks to people just like I do every single week that are in that hole. A lot of times you aren't going to get out. And unfortunately, many, far, far too many, choose to unalive themselves.
Well, look at me, Dan. I'm 46-year-old. I've been out of my case a few years, and I've got a good relationship with my daughter, and it's still affecting me. I felt this whole case with this guy. I felt everything he's felt
Mm-hmm.
for him, for his children, and I won't stop, Dan, and I will stand back to back with this guy until I won't stop until he gets custody, and I can promise him something. I will get custody for this guy, and I will come back one day, Dan, and I will make a video for you, and I will tell you, show you a picture that he's got custody. I'll show you the court order. I promise you that. I will not stop.
And
And
thank God for you, Simon, that you're there to be there for him. And by the way, as much for his children as you are for him.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you said like about the climbing mountains. He's actually, I've told him to try and calm it down a bit, but he's going out every day. Like every day I phone him up and he's in a hammock in a tree in the middle of a forest, or he's doing a 3-peak challenge in the UK over a 24-hour period, or he'll be climbing up some mountain somewhere, or he's at some crazy place. It's like he's off trying to do anything to get his mind active.
Yep.
Like he can't sit. Well, he sits at home and he just sits and looks out the window with the
Yep.
dog.
Yep.
And he knows his kid. Yeah, he knows his kids aren't coming home, but he sits and watches like a crazy person, because it just makes you crazy.
Yeah, and again, I lived through this. Mine was going to the gym, right? I'm a trainer also,
Yeah.
but I would spend 4, 5, 6 hours pounding iron, because
Yeah.
it was either that or I was sitting home alone in a darkened room in a chair. God knows what I would have thought. God knows what level I would reach. I'm not one. I would never commit suicide ever. It's just not something I am capable of doing. Thank God. But I get it. I could see why someone would do it. I can understand it. And
I do.
having a way, whether it's climbing mountains, pounding iron, whatever, if it helps you to deal with it, my friends out there, do it. As long as it's, don't. The problem is most guys turn to alcohol, drugs,
Anger.
something else. Find something
Yeah.
productive that you can do to get yourself through it. Because honestly, I always say to people that say, to talk to me about this, what would you say is the worst thing that could happen to you as a parent? And they inevitably, the response is the same every time. My child dies. And I say to them, that's horrific. It's not the worst. The worst is your child's alive and hates you.
Yeah, because that's ongoing. That's ongoing grief. You can't heal from that grief.
You
It's a
cannot.
never-ending. It's like your child dies every day, and then you come to terms with it, and they die again, and they die again, and it's never-ending grief.
It's every second of every minute of every day, etc., etc. It never ends.
Yeah. What I'd like from this, Dan, is if I know it happens on both sides, but my experiences with the targeted parent being the father. I just hope that this goes out to a woman, sorry, a mother, one or two or three or even four, it doesn't matter, at least one that listens to this video and thinks to themselves, do you know what? I've done a little bit of that. Because remember, some of this can be done accidental,
Mm-hmm.
but but the outcome's still the same.
Yep.
So it makes no odds. Um, Maybe they can have a think about what they're doing. They could wake up in the morning and stop all this crap, all the animosity between the parents, because it always ends up in family court. Then you're both in trouble. That's when the mess starts. You dig a huge hole for yourself, both of you. Maybe all you've got to do, pick up the phone and say, do you know what? Let's co-parent. We're both right. We're both wrong. Who cares? You have them on them days. I have them on these days. You put a proposal together. You don't even have to speak. There's something out there in the UK, Dan, called the Parenting app, and it's basically like a texting app
Yeah, they have
where
them
you
here
can
too.
talk to each other.
Yep.
It's completely recorded, and you can't. Everything you say is recorded.
Yep.
And you do everything on that. There's no excuses for it. Put your animosity to the one side, and if a child is genuinely being abused, that's a different story. But I think parental alienation, looking at the damage that it's done, that I've seen, that it's absolutely destroyed children, and they've always come back, like you have done. I hate my mother. I wish she was dead. That's
Yep.
what they say,
Yep.
and that's the position they're going to be in. And if they're not in that position, they'll come across somebody like me, Dan, who's going to back up a father. They'll come up. There's new tests. There's new tests for parental alienation in the courts now. They're starting to recognise it. We've got a fact finder here, and we're coming for them, Dan. So this guy's going to get custody, and she's going to lose custody, and she will regret she ever did this. And I hope to God that it gets out to one parent. We stop it. We stop one at least.
Simon, thank you so much. I just will add one thing. She's not going to regret it.
Yeah.
They're too psychologically gone to ever even have regret. But on that note, we do have to wrap things up. I can't thank you again enough for not only giving of your time once but twice, because this is part two, and helping to educate people. And like you said at the end there, if we can get one parent, whether it's mom or dad, who is alienating their child from the other parent, to recognize just how damaging that behavior is, and not just to the other parent, which is their ultimate goal, but to themselves, and most of all to their children. If you care about your children, if you love your children like you all say you do, you would not do this, because any parent
Exactly.
that does not love their children. I'm going to get off my soapbox. Simon, how can people follow you or reach you if they so desire?
So I am called Mustache Man 23 on TikTok. I think that's the only thing. I do use Twitter and stuff, but I never really go on it. So if you want to speak to me, go through my TikTok or speak to Dan.
Oh yeah, I can
hopefully
connect you.
Dan will. Hopefully Dan will want to do some question and answers. What I would like to happen is for people to write in. If Dan was to put some kind of an email address or something, and you could write your stories to us, we could pick half a dozen and cover them, and we could talk about them, what they should do, what position they're in, what they should do, what they do in court, because what you do in court is absolutely essential. You get it right. If you don't get it right, you've lost your kids.
Right.
It's just, you have to prove parental alienation to get your children back. Otherwise, you ain't getting them back. And it's the most complex thing. You know yourself, 61 years, it's the most complex thing you can go through. And it is so hard to evidence. So we could do something where we hear a few people's stories and we do some question and answers.
And
That
if,
would be great.
yeah, and you can reach me through my email, which is menneedtobeheard@gmail.com. It actually is linked below every show. You can reach out to me to that through that. You can put it in the comments. If you have questions,
Yeah.
concerns, put them in the comments. I always look in the comments. Simon, I'm sure will look at the comments on this show. I would love to do, where we can help some people out. Simon, we do have to wrap up. I cannot say again, thank you so much for coming on. Guys,
Mr. Stone?
wait, let me bring you back. Do it one more time. I'm jealous.
Mustache Man 23. That was cheesy.
I
Come
am
on.
so jealous. All right.
You better cut that bit out, Dan, all right?
Not a chance. All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Guys, powerful show again. Again, this was part 2. So if you've watched this one, go to part 1. Links are below on it. Because the 2 shows together will really give you a good understanding of parental alienation and what it's like to go through it. And if you've enjoyed it, give me that thumbs up. Please consider sharing this with other people because we're fighting the algorithm. I'll be honest with you, the social medias don't like us talking about this topic. The best way we can defeat that, them throttling it and not allowing it to be talked about, is for you to take this show and share it with as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to spread the word. And of course, subscribe to the channel. I have more shows coming up on various topics and issues that men and boys face. And we're going to wrap it up at that. Guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.